It is time to touch our bags and drop our sack on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. It is our mailbag segment, and this is our final mailbag before the NFL trade deadline. So you better believe the 12s have some trade ideas they want to talk about. We will also evaluate where this Seahawks team is at and where they're headed from here. Plenty to discuss on today's show. Tyler Jones here with you. Thanks for joining us. And before we go any further, folks, I want to make sure not only that you're subscribed to Seahawks Today, but you're part of the Noti gang. See that right there? There it is. Right there. Get my fingers right. Turn on notifications. That way you never miss a moment of Seahawks Today. We're bringing you daily coverage. Anytime there's a trade or free agent signing, big injury, we got a video on the channel as fast as we can. We do our live shows on Wednesdays. We're live every game day. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. That way you're the first to know when we have new content. If you're part of that Noti gang, spam Noti gang in the comments section. Let us know. We'll get started with today's show. We begin with a $5 super chat from Dan the Man Miller with the werewolf at all. Dan the Man writes, could Grubb and Macdonald get fired if we have a losing season? I say yes to Grubb, no to Macdonald. Barring scandal from Mike Macdonald, it would have to be something like, having an affair with an intern, like what we saw with the Boston Celtics a couple of years ago, or Urban Meyer skipping the team plane to, rub elbows with a 21-year-old at his bar. Mike Macdonald's not getting fired, so let's start there. He's not going anywhere. Ryan Grubb, here's what I'm looking at. If he doesn't figure out this run game soon, then his seat could get warm. They need to run the football. I've said it 1,000 times. I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. They have to find a way to run the football, and Ryan Grubb's got to figure that out. If they can't get the run game going, then his job very well could be on the line potentially. Dan the Man, thanks for sending that super chat. Jake Van Beek, a first-time super chatter, writes in with a $10 super chat. Do you think we should draft a QB next year or keep Geno? What's your plan, Tyler? So here is my plan. My foolproof 100% plan that will never fail you. If I were John Schneider, I would approach things this way. If there is a quarterback you like in this year's draft, and John Schneider's made it no secret that last draft he really likes J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. You go back a year prior, he really liked C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson. If there's a quarterback you like that you are in a position to draft, then you go ahead and draft him. And what I would do is I would bring Geno back for the final year of his contract, let him remain the starter, and then set yourself up for a transition, whether it be at the end of the season or mid-season. Let that young quarterback sit behind Geno Smith, especially with the question marks on this offensive line. I have a bad feeling it's not going to be any better next year either. Let them learn how the NFL process works. It's still the best formula. We've seen it time and time again in the National Football League. Tom Brady sat behind Drew Bledsoe. Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. Brock Purdy sat behind Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a tried and true formula that has worked more times than not. That's what I would do if I was Seattle, if there's a quarterback I like. I know I don't like the quarterbacks in this year's draft so much, but if there's somebody they're confident in, that's what I would do. Adam writes in with a $2 super chat. Do you think we should put Spoon at corner? I think he's referring to outside corner because obviously he is a corner, but he plays that nickelback spot. And nobody likes nickelback, both on the football field and off the football field, if you know what I mean. But putting him on the outside, I'm not opposed to that idea. But what I'm worried about, Adam, is that if you do that, does that take away from all he's capable of? Does that limit his role by putting him at nickel as opposed to outside corner? Because he plays that nickel spot pretty dang well. And Mike Macdonald had a chance to move him to outside corner this year. Obviously, Pete Carroll had him at the nickel, but he felt most comfortable keeping him at the nickel spot too. So that would be my concern. But then again, if you move him to outside, then we're not having to worry about guys like Josh Jobe and Trey Brown being your starting outside corners. So it's an interesting thought. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I'm not confident that that's a great solution either. Rich with a $5 super chat writes in, should the Hawks consider sacking AD? Yeah, said it UK style. I like that. And let Leslie Frazier run the defense. So I feel like I've been the bearer of bad news with answering these questions here. Here's the reality, Rich, and I think it's a very fair question. Mike Macdonald calls the defense. He's still running the defense. If you sack AD and turn things over to Leslie Frazier, nothing really is going to change. AD, yes, is by title the defensive coordinator, but this is still Mike Macdonald's defense. So I don't think it really does a whole lot if you were to switch roles there as far as that goes. But it's a fair question to ask. I just don't think you're going to see much of a difference on that front. Sad Sherman writes in, could you see the Seahawks trade for Chase Young? Seahawks have about $9 million in cap space. Chase Young, I think, is getting a pretty fat check from the New Orleans Saints. Seattle could use some help at edge rusher. They passed on the chance to go after Chase Young last year, and he was pretty decent for San Francisco in their run to get to the Super Bowl. Had about 7.5 sacks. The Saints are a disaster this season. You got to think they're looking to sell some parts and pieces here. Chase Young, I would say the answer is probably no. I don't think they will. But he would be somebody I would keep tabs on. If the price drops down, if they can get the Saints to take on some of that contract potentially, then Chase Young would be a very good possibility. I mean, he was the number 2 draft pick for a reason a few years ago. Should the Seahawks trade for Chase Young? Type T for trade, P for pass. Weigh in our pinned comment today. Let us know what you think. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the place to go for daily fantasy made easy. Here's how it works. You choose 2 or more players in any given category, get the choice of more or less, whether you're talking fantasy points in football, rebounds in basketball, goals in hockey, all sorts of different categories to choose from. And with PrizePicks, they got this great thing, folks, that they will give you $50 when you spend $5 for free. You do not even have to win to get the said money. It's a great deal from PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS, promo code CLNS. This week, I got JSN to have more than 54.5 receiving yards with the questions remaining on DK with his injury. I think that's a good one there. Jameis Winston, I have more than half an interception. I love me some Jameis, but he's a turnover machine. I think that could bode pretty well here. You can play along with me, prizepicks.com/CLNS, promo code CLNS. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. Check out PrizePicks today. You'll be glad you did. Fobia writes in, we have success throwing to our running backs. You think we should utilize more quick passes from the backfield? Yes, absolutely. And with the Seahawks' struggles to run the football, one of the things I point to is one of my favorite guys in the National Football League, the best coach in football, Andy Reid. And what Andy Reid has done over the years is, as a substitute for the run game, Andy Reid has effectively used running backs out of the backfield in the short passing game and the screen passing game and been very effective. Andy will be the first to tell you he doesn't really like to run the football that much. His offense has changed in recent years with moving on from Tyreek Hill and others where the Chiefs have to run the football. But you look back to his days all the way back in Philadelphia with Ryan Westbrook to even now more recently with Isaiah Pacheco, that is something they've always done a good job of. And if I'm Ryan Grubb, I'm looking at what Andy Reid does, the best coach in the league, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, why can't we do that? Why don't we use Walker and Charbonnet and McIntosh, who are all good receiving backs, as receivers out of the backfield? I think it'd make a ton of sense. The Boz are writing in, would it make sense to trade for Xavier Woods? Xavier Woods, safety from the Carolina Panthers. Seahawks have some question marks at the safety position. With the injury to Rayshon Jenkins, we're not so sure if he's going to come back this season or not. Xavier Woods, young player. He's had a pretty decent career, 3 interceptions in 2021. So far this season, off to a decent start, 46 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 pass breakups, 1 interception. I don't think he's a bad football player, and I don't think he'd cost you a lot either. And the thing about Rayshon Jenkins, too, with him being gone now, in all likelihood, he's not coming back. And so you're looking to find your long-term answer. Xavier Woods might potentially be that long-term solution you're looking for to play alongside Julian Love. So, yeah, Xavier Woods could be an interesting option and not hurt you too much against the cap with just about $9 million right now. Should the Seahawks trade for Xavier Woods? Type Y for yes, in for no. What do you guys think? Way in the comments section. Time for a couple more questions here. Let's start with Jefferton. Jefferton writes in, do you think John Schneider will finally wake up and start building a decent O-line? The entire O-line is being paid less than $20 million total. I'm not getting my hopes up. I wish they would. But John Schneider, for whatever reason, has not invested in this offensive line. Charles Cross is about the only quality offensive lineman that they have. Lockett Tomlinson hasn't been good. Connor Williams has not been good. The right guard spot has been a mess with Bradford and Haynes. And then the right tackle spot has just been a disaster, going to your fourth-string right tackle and Mike Jarrell right now. I would hope, and maybe we'll see John Schneider get a wake-up call this offseason, but it's not been good when it comes to that offensive line there. Last question for Brian Gomez writes in, would the Hawks get anything back for Lockett? Well, here's the problem. With the way that his cap situation is structured here, yes, you would get something back, but it probably would not be worth your while with how much you have to pay him either way. It doesn't make sense to trade Tyler Lockett. And I know Tyler Lockett had that bad game against Buffalo this past week and everything, but it just doesn't. The financials don't add up. I think realistically what's going to happen with Tyler Lockett, and it pains me to say this, but I'm going to be real with y'all. I always tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I don't see the Seahawks taking on Tyler Lockett's $30+ million cap hit next offseason. I think he's probably going to be cut, and that'll be the end of it, and he'll go somewhere else to finish his career. I think that they probably are not in a financial position to make a trade right now. I think that's just kind of the hand they're dealt. Thanks for joining us here on Seattle Seahawks Today. For continuing Seahawks coverage, subscribe now for free, youtube.com/SeahawksTV. I'm Tyler Jones. We'll see you next time.